just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Taylor Cook is a professional ice hockey player, having played for St. Thomas University in Canada's top league, USports, and playing in multiple countries spanning North America, Europe, and Asia. Taylor is a podcast creator and host of The Athletic Mind, your go-to podcast for maximizing your mental game. Join Taylor, mental performance coach and former pro hockey player, for open conversations about mental health, mindset, and performance. You'll be introduced to a wealth of mental performance tools, resources, and insights designed to transform the way you play and lead. Taylor also founded Tailored Minds, mental performance coaching for athletes and sports coaches. She empowers them to maximize their performance potential through the use of psychological tools and strategies designed to enhance mental strength, resilience, and overall performance. Services include individual one-on-one private coaching, team workshops and seminars, and online programs. We welcome Taylor Cook to the podcast. Thanks for being here today. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
No, thanks for having me. I'm always excited to jump on and have authentic conversations, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I'm glad you used that word. That's such a big part of what we do as coaches, and you as a fellow coach as well. I'm sure it could be a buzzword sometimes, but it's true, right? And cliches are cliches for a reason, because they're true in part. So authenticity, yeah. Let's. I want to make sure I practice that today, and I have my first authentic question, just regarding sports in general. I think it's so many people's and like young kids' dream to play a high level of sports and to compete at a high level. And you have such an interesting playing career. Just wondering if you can hit upon a few points that really stick out to you for like your playing experiences and playing at the level that you've experienced so far.
Yeah, good question. When I think back to when I was a kid, right, like the whole reason I started playing was just because I loved the sport. Like I just genuinely enjoyed playing hockey, and it's like whenever I strapped the pads on, like time didn't exist, problems outside the rink were not there anymore, but I don't know, I just had this kind of like deep drive that I just wanted to like keep being the best I could be. Like I of course wanted to be like, an Olympic athlete and this type of thing as well. But when I think, back to when I was even in junior level, I didn't know that like it was possible to play college hockey until I had a university approach me. And I was like, oh, okay. So there's actually like so much more than just playing pro. Like you can go and play at school and I can like actually get a degree from this. Like this can actually take me so many places. And I think it was just like the pure passion and love of the game that really was what drove me the whole way through.
And can you tell us where did it take you after college? Because you went on to play a pretty high level of hockey after that.
Yeah. So after college, I ended up going overseas to Europe. So it was kind of like a crazy journey because I knew that there was hockey overseas at this point. I had ambitions to go and play, and I'd been contacted from a team in Kazakhstan, and they said like, all right, we want to give you like a 3-year contract. We have aspirations to try to get through the Olympic qualifications, and they needed a goalie. So I was like super amped up, committed to this. Like, this is my opportunity to like play at an Olympic level maybe. So that's really cool. And then like 2 weeks before I would have had to go and move to Kazakhstan for 3 years, they were like, yeah, no, we decided to take another goalie instead. So it was like having my entire dream ripped out from underneath me. But at this point in the game, I'd been through so many ups and downs at that point, and I just kind of said, all right, like this sucks. And I took the time to feel what I needed to feel in that moment. But by the next day I was like, yeah, you know what, like this sucks. And I am upset about this, but everything happens for a reason. And that means that something better and something that's more in alignment with who I am and where I need to be is going to come along. Next day, I had a call from a guy in Hungary who was looking for a goalie. Um, Ironically enough, that also didn't work out. I ended up going over there to coach. So I was coaching for like 3 months with a U25 girls team in Hungary. And yeah, like what a wild experience that was. First of all, I wasn't even living in Budapest, like the major city. I was living in this wee little village like an hour away, and yeah, no one spoke English. Only maybe the young ones spoke a little English. I had to learn how to drive stick from a Hungarian speaking teacher, so that was also quite the challenge. But after about 3 months, I got a call from a team in Norway. They were looking for a goalie for their women's team, so I had them fly me out there for a weekend, do a tryout, and yeah, basically like the moment that I touched down, I was like, yeah, this is like where I need to be. This is it. Like, I had a really good gut feeling. And yeah, I ended up staying in Norway for 2 seasons before meeting my now boyfriend, and we now live in Germany. I played for Kazakhstan last season, retired in January, and this is now 1 year of retirement, and I'm stepping back into play with a team in Memmingen this week, actually. So it's been a wild ride.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I'm learning so much. First of all, I didn't even know that Kazakhstan had hockey was big there. That's so interesting to me. And then yeah, just some of what you said about like I heard things like feel what I needed to feel, and then also like the intuition of like it just felt right after like some shifting around. So I'd like to maybe bring Coach Nick in, because so much of what we do is like we have that belief system, like life happens for us, not to us, right? So like as long as we have this thing in our mind with how we see our lives going, and sometimes God or the universe, like there's another plan, right? So there's like practicing the non-resistance of like, well, that door closed, I really wanted that door to be open.
Mm-hmm.
But just wondering how Coach Nick sees that similarities with what we do as coaches, right? When we meet with our clients and coach them through some of that.
Yeah, such a cool story, Taylor. I'm sure I know it's only like 2 minutes of it, but it's amazing that what things happen, what we expect to happen, what we don't expect to happen, and life is what we do with it, not what actually happens. It's so cool to think about like those journeys, because yeah, it happens all the time. It's like often what sets people back is that they go out and they fail at something, and then they think, okay, I'm not good enough, or it's not the way it's supposed to be. But it's just win or learning. Like, it's a cliche for cliche's reason. And so, what really is intriguing to me, and perhaps we can make a little bit of a leap here, but and by the way, being called Taylor and then having your business called Tailored Minds, or at least your website called that, like that's just cheating. That's just it's spot on, excellent stuff, very cool.
Thank you.
What I'd love to ask in this piece is like, how do you take? No doubt it's part of it, but like, what was the point where you got the focus from like the athletic, physical pursuit of it, and then go, okay, now I want to have mental performance coaching, right? Was there a moment you said, I've got to help people with this part of it because that's the most challenging part of it? Or is it like, okay, this is where I can do my best work now? Or is it like, well, that I can give back in this way now, or that's what's intriguing to me? I'd love to hear that difference, because as Coach said, for us, like there's all the same, like it's essentially all the same stuff. As a performance coach, it's just what's your particular flavor, where's your niche, where's your area of focus, and obviously that comes from that your athletic background. But like, how did you make that move or leap, or like how did that play out for you?
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy when I think about it, because if I give you just like the bare facts, it's okay. Like I kind of got introduced to a little bit of what the mental side of sports was when I was in my first year of junior, and my coach at the time had given me a book called Mind Gym by Gary Mack, like the number one book I recommend to any of my athletes to read. And yeah, like I was actually going to go to school for psychology. wasn't testing the way that I was really hoping I would. So I ended up switching my major, and that was maybe against my better judgment at the time. But like, it is what it is. And anyway, yeah, I got to Norway. I was playing, and like I knew that if I was going to keep playing, like I really just wanted to have something to kind of fall back on afterwards, because at this point you're not really getting paid a lot in women's hockey, especially in a country like Norway, to be able to play, right? Like that's just kind of how it is right now, which is unfortunate. And I do see that that's changing, which is great. But before I go off on that kind of a tangent, let me reel it back in here. Yeah, so I actually got certified while I was still playing. So I was kind of planning for my career after sports while I was still playing sports. And it wasn't until COVID happened when I actually like had some time to kind of sit back and do a lot more reflection, like most of the world did at that point, and started to kind of recognize some of the patterns from when I was younger that were kind of coming up, and a lot of the relation it had to my dad. And so my dad was a huge Tony Robbins guy, would preach him to me day and night whenever I saw him, kind of like planting those little seeds in there. But he was also bipolar. And so I was like very attuned to the whole mental side of things, not just in sport, but in life, really early on in life. And I even think back to when I was playing junior. Some of my friends, they were suffering from depression and some other, not very ideal kind of mental health issues. And they would always come to me to talk about those things. Like I was kind of the safe space for quite a few people. And so I'm actually really proud of that, being that person. But it's just kind of been the pattern in my life where it's like, if somebody has a problem with something, or if they need help or advice, like a lot of the times, like they come and start talking to me about these things. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a good sounding board for people. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, I just really enjoy the aspect of the mental side of sport, pulling from my own career as well. Like I had my own mental health issues while I was in university too. So I have my firsthand experience. I have experience from growing up with my dad, from being there for my friends. And honestly, I know how stressful it can be to be a student athlete or a pro athlete, and just want to be there to kind of help athletes figure out the mental side of it, not just for hockey, not just for sports, but for life in general. Because as much as, the old school coaches want to say, drop it at the door, doesn't work that way. Just doesn't. And it definitely doesn't work that way if you don't have the mental skills to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll say as well, it's so intriguing with your, I guess, kind of like Tony Robbins background through your father. I was a Tony Robbins coach for a long time, so that resonates a lot for me. So I've been deep into that world as well, and so there's a lot of stuff there. But your demeanor certainly is someone that I get why people come to you, right? Like you're calm and like I don't know what you've been like as what it looks like when you're playing, but that's certainly like I could see that, right? Because people, you draw people in when you've got that calm. Like people feel like they're open, so that's pretty cool. And it shows me why you've gone down this path. Because I remember when I was I worked for 20 years in banking before I was a coach, and I remember like talking to my wife, like I think I'd be good at this coaching thing. Like, don't you think? Like trying to convince myself while trying to convince her at the same time. But it comes from that same thing. Like people tend to talk to me, and it's pretty cool. So like, there's lots of resonance I got from that. So thanks for sharing, Taylor. So what does forward look like for you? Like, so you mentioned retiring and kind of unretiring, or doing some stuff this year. What are you working on? What are you trying to accomplish right now? Like, that's do you have a big goal, big look? Are you zooming out? Like, is 24 a recalibration in some senses? Like, how far are you looking in the future right now?
That's a loaded question, Nick. So
You're welcome.
I was not anticipating playing again this year. Like that was not really on my radar until there was some potential kind of in the beginning of December, but it was still kind of like, I haven't gotten contact from anybody, so like I'm not going to get too invested, right? Meanwhile, now over the last 2 weeks, like we've been shipping gear from like multiple countries to get me ready for for this week. So But yeah, in terms of like the coaching business, I've just started my Tailored Minds coaching. So before I was working with a different company in Toronto, but me living in Europe, the time change, and honestly, like it's not easy to grow a market for another company when you're the only person from that company that's living in this market. So I figured like if I'm going to do this, I might as well just be doing it under my own name. So I decided like maybe July or August that I was going to launch my coaching company, and now it's been, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. Like kind of experiencing the growing pains of business and all the things that go on behind the scenes that maybe I was not privy to before. So it's definitely been a huge learning curve, but I have really high hopes for 2024. I'm going to be working on some partnerships with some different entities, and just really trying to diversify kind of the way that the people are able to find me. So of course, I have my podcast, The Athletic Mind, but being like so heavy in the hockey industry, just trying to kind of align with other people who are also in that same industry, and see what kind of comes from it from there. But yeah, I think it's more about getting uh, clearly set as a company, like actually having a little bit more of an identity, maybe getting a little bit deeper into the values and what it is that I really want to be not just standing for as like as a person, but also what I want to see in my athletes too, and what I want to cultivate in those people.
I think there is some similarities, Coach Nick, with us as coaches, right? Like, I always thought that being a coach was like a life hack because we get to be around these principles, and especially because we're coaching others to them, it puts us in a position where we need to practice them and put our best foot forward and put these habits into place and achieve results and get clear on the results that we want. So, like you use the word identity, right? So I never wanted to be in a position to where I felt like I had to be somebody else with the work that I did. And, I was aware before I became a coach that, I had to be this person in this role in this job. And it got to a point to where I didn't want to do that anymore. And I feel like I'm hearing a little bit of that with you with, like coaching under an organization that, first of all, is, a number of time zones away. But like you can do it yourself, right? You can just you can create your own identity, and your own values for what you want to stand for. And then like you use the word alignment, right? Just connecting with other people in the industry that share some of those values. And then that's how the business grows, right? You eventually connect with people and you find people who are in need of, like, that's the alignment part, right? Like what you're offering, there's so much of a need out there for it. You just have to like follow the trail so that people can find you, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how your business grows. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of observing that. So back to Coach Nick's question, um, maybe share like about your podcast too. Like what are the goals? You just want to grow it? Like, is growth a good word to think about when you think about your success in your professional world?
Yeah, I think growth is always like the number one word that comes up for me every year. Like I feel like there's really no end to that journey, right? Like you've learned something new about yourself all the time, and then like you're, oh, okay, well I need to do a little bit better here so I can kind of hit that, that next goal or that next target or whatever. And yeah, I think that's kind of always going to be like it's not even like a value at this point. Like that's just like part of my identity, is like just constantly wanting to get better, wanting to improve, whether that's on the ice, off the ice, doesn't matter. Like that's just kind of who I am. um but yeah, I guess like if we talk podcast specifically, like of course growth is on that, but I think it's also more about creating community out of it this year too. So that's kind of like one of my long-term goals, is to have a bit of a community space to be able to have athletes connect with other athletes, coaches with coaches, all of the connections, honestly, just have more of those open discussions, conversations around performance, mindset, mental health, all of these things, and open up those lines of communication. So that's kind of the long term goal, is to have more of a community where I can, intentionally be engaging with audience, and that's one of the things that I've identified also from last year, and I've struggled with. It kind of goes in the same category as the identity. Is like, I was trying to have like my own life and like having my podcast kind of separate, like with its own channel, and then also having, my own business channel. And it was just getting to the point where it's like, no, like it's so much extra effort for me to have multiple channels. Like I am this brand, this person, this podcast, like that's what it needs to be. And so I think it's, again, like, it's like one of my big things this year is just like, if I'm going to be doing any sort of like engagement online, like it's only going to be through my personal pages, because I don't want to be a company and I don't want to be a podcast. I want to be me, and I want people to associate my name with those things. And that's awesome. So that's one of the long-term goals too.
Yeah, get paid for being you, right? And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Like, it's okay to, like, we're providing value for people and the authenticity of ourselves, right? So people would pay good money for that, and they do. I'd like to start to segue into we got your mind scan results, which is part of our show that we get excited about. So maybe before we do that, Coach Nick, any other qualifications or qualifying questions or anything about success that we'd like to know from Taylor before we jump into this?
Well, I just want to make a point about the being yourself. It's such a weird paradox, isn't it? It's kind of like the focus on the more specific, who do I serve and why do I want to serve it? It seems like you go out there and see what other people are doing, and it's like, we know that comparison can be the thief of joy, but it's useful to be able to see what else is possible and what people are doing, to kind of just go, okay, that's a similar journey for me. But then, to your point, Taylor, make it just you. And it seems like that's challenging, but it should be the easiest thing in the world to be ourselves, right? It's like, when it's not feel like it's an effort, you're just saying what's coming out. I think that's the most, again, that way, authentic way of doing it, and just trust that the people that resonate with you will be the people that resonate with you no matter what you say, because that's always just you. And I find that very freeing, but also challenging to stay in that spot. And that tension between those things is a challenge, right? It's like, how do we get really clear about where we want to go with taking examples for what's possible, but also to say, here's my particular completely unique version of that together as we're setting out the milestones that we're looking for get to in the future. I think that's really clear. I mean, and so for me, that comes down to clarity, right? And so that's and energy goes where focus goes, and so we want to be clear as we possibly can about what that future is. And so be cool to see that as we tie this into the mind scan, as Coach Josh does this year. Because what's cool about the mind scan is, and I'm sure that you've come across a bunch of different assessments and such, Taylor, in your journey. But it's so important to be able to give us almost a pre-warning system, right? Because if we can understand what our thinking patterns are at any given moment, we can kind of predict what we're going to act on, because our thoughts equal our actions equal our results, and the results ultimately impact the quality of our life. And that's a good point, again, back to the authentic piece. If it feels like our life isn't authentic to who we are, like how we're feeling, the feelings that we're giving to ourselves based on what we laid out to say are true or not for our success, then it comes back down to, okay, where's the thinking, right? And so if we can use the mind scan as an early warning system, the course corrects that we have to make along the way, which I don't go away, we always have to make course corrects, but perhaps like the peaks aren't quite as high and the lows aren't quite as low, and if we can level things out, we can be more sustainable. So I'm hoping you're going to take some of that stuff away from the mind scan today. But did you have fun doing it, Taylor? What was your experience completing the mind scan?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure what to expect, actually. Like, I don't know. I kind of go into these types of assessments with like a light heart. I don't really have too much in terms of expectations for them. But when I saw some of the terms on there, I was like, where are we going with this? Like, how do you really judge thought processes based on some of these words here? But I'm sure you're going to explain to me, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we have on the screen your mind scan results, and we just want to point out a few things. That Dr. Hartman, who created this assessment, he believed that there are pillars of thinking that all of our thinking falls into, right? So think of all the shades of color in the world are all derived from three primary colors. His theory was that it's the same with our thinking, and that we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 65,000 thoughts every single day. And what we're prioritizing and how clearly we think about our thoughts and each of these dimensions provides such a world of awareness for us that Coach Nick was mentioning about, um, uh, as far as the early warning system of like, well, what's happening? What's happening like beneath our consciousness? And this is meant to bring a new level of awareness back to how our thinking is working. Okay, so on the screen here is Hartman's three pillars of thinking, what he calls relator, doer, and thinker. And we'll jump more into what that means and how it applies and why it's useful and why we use it. Where I wanted to start was where we sort of left off, or right before we entered into sharing the screen here. We talked about the future, right, and your goals and the importance of clarity. I think Coach Nick said something about clarity. So there's something happening interesting in the self-direction, which is the thinker to your internal world. And you can think of this dimension like, first of all, here's the definition: the ability and desire to live out goals, principles, and values. This is your idea on how you should bend the rules by which you govern yourself. So we talked about identity and values, etc. So what's coming through here is that you're super committed to where you're going. So that's where that circle falls on this scale, something that you pay a lot of attention to, and where you're super committed is going to be towards the top. So you can see how close to the top that circle is. And it's also, at least relative to your other circles, a bit of a lower clarity. So all it's saying is that you're committed to something, but you're not exactly sure what that is specifically. So when we see this, we think that we can associate this with the opportunity to just develop a little bit more clarity on where you're going, and what that specifically means. How will you know that you've gotten to where you go? What are the milestone or the mile markers that you would be proud of, or that you'd be excited about or celebrate once you achieve them? And it's that place of living in, like, we don't want to live in what we think is possible, especially when we're talking about a long period of time. Sometimes what we think we're capable of is so far beyond what we think we're capable of, if that makes sense. So we want to do like a magic wand exercise. What would be great to have? What was so phenomenal that we'd celebrate to the utmost if we achieved it? And there's an opportunity here, because you're so committed to it, that offering that additional clarity will just do a world of good with where you're going. I'm wondering if that resonates with you, if that lands with you, Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I mean, I think I've already kind of alluded to this earlier, like I have pretty big ambitions in terms of, where it is I want to go with like building a company for myself and this. But I think especially in the last months with like the launch of the company and like all the marketing and everything kind of falling on my own hands. And, I've kind of felt a little bit pulled in multiple different directions. And there's for sure times where I'm like, it would just be easier to have a corporate job and, have like monthly or yearly salary and just have great benefits and just be done with it, So I feel like there's days where I kind of step back into that. I'm like, it'd be so much easier. But that lifestyle just doesn't fit with me too well. So.
Yeah. And that's a natural progression, right? Because I think taking that leap and starting your own business and going out on your own can be lonely, right? That can be a very challenging experience, because first of all, you've never been there before. And second of all, I think Coach Nick mentioned this, we look for as much of other people's examples of success, but we're making this our own in the process. So it's like this delicate dance of like stepping out of the comfort zone and also recognizing like, if this is the path that you're called on, like, first of all, it's the right one. And second of all, that discomfort like is part of the process. But like, oh man, wouldn't it be great? Like, I'm missing some of that stability and that sureness of like a corporate job here. But I wanted to point this out too. So the greatest strength or your biggest clarity in the internal is this role awareness. So this is where you can go when you think about your future direction, and getting clear on that is what you do really well, right? And we've already talked about that just based on your journey and the fact that, friends and even family have come to you like to talk about some of their stuff. Like you are good at that. This is the ability to know, the roles that you play and who you are. This is the identity part of that internal internal world, and you're so clear on what you do really well. So that's what this big green circle is saying. That this is one of your gifts, to know and to be aware of what you do well and what you offer for people as far as value is concerned. So to lean into that further, right? There's an opportunity that you'll read more in your full results, that we call a sweet spot analysis. We actually have a document. Perhaps we could share that with you after our time together today, of the combination of your 3 Ps, what we call your passion, your purpose, and your profit, of earning a living doing what you love to do and offering incredible value. And when you're in that space, it's like this magical moment of like, well, this is where I belong. Like I'm getting paid to be myself. This is what comes natural to me, offering value to others. And they're like lining out the door because I'm so good at it. And it just like, doesn't everybody, see this the way that I do? It's like, sometimes we get caught up in that, and not everybody sees it as clearly as you do and can offer the value that you offer. And that's where that magic happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to see like how everything looks on paper, and I think that's maybe one of the most challenging things oftentimes with like the mental side, right? Is like you can't see anything on paper, or you can't like actually physically see a lot of like what it is that
Yes.
you're trying to do. So it's good to have at least some sort of representation that gives you a little bit deeper insight as to like the thinking process and kind of where you're currently at, so you can kind of see, okay, these are some strengths, weaknesses, how can I kind of improve those things to get to the point like where I actually want to be in the future. It's good.
It's a great point to make. Coach Josh actually sent me this thing. It's found on Instagram a couple of weeks back. Sent it to a bunch of us here, and it was just a guy trying to do a math problem. He's like, with no calculator, trying to do it in his head. What was it, Coach? Like 3,925 divided by 15 or something. It's like, well, you
Yeah.
could probably get somewhere with that in your head, but you're basically going to start asking for a pen and paper. Right? You want to get it out of your head. Is a great place to like, it's very powerful, that front of your mind, to work on that information, but it's very small in terms of the information it can carry. But if we would want to do that one math problem, we want to put it on paper, but yet most of us are going through our lives with everything that's happening all the time for us, just trying to figure it out in our head. All of our past, all of our relationships, all of our emotions, all of our potential future, all of the expectations of people that put on us, and we're just trying to figure it out in our head. It's so crazy. So great, like absolutely, Taylor. Right? It's good to just be able to see something of it so that you can start to move it forward. But it's such a powerful thing because you can't see yourself. A jar cannot see its own label. And then what's really jumping out for me in this piece is that I just want to underscore really what Coach Josh said. Take that role awareness and put it to your self direction. Because what jumps out for me is that you're so committed to being that next version of yourself and not having that corporate job. Because I love that old saying. What's the two most addictive things in the world? It's heroin and a monthly salary. Like it's like there's an appeal to that, to be able to do that. But like if you know that that's not going to work for you, then like you get the hell away from it, because it's like it's a dangerous place. But it's like it's a risk. Like wherever you are is a risk. Go to that corporate job. It's a risk because like you hate yourself forever if it's not for you. Or you go and start your own business, and like what happens if it doesn't turn out the way you expect? That's a risk as well, right? But then, and if you do something in between, that's a risk as well. And like moving to a different country is a risk, or having a significant other's a risk, or not having one's a risk. Like everything's a risk. It's like choose the risk at least with something a direction where you're excited about going. And so like what for me the big jump out and the feedback I'd like to share with you, Taylor, is to underscore that it's like you're committed to going somewhere and creating the next version of yourself. Don't worry about not being committed. You're committed, but perhaps like just the clarity of what you're committed to will change that circle, make it a bit bigger, which means you'll be able to see more ways of getting there. And if you can see more ways of getting there, then you'll feel more okay with how you go towards that, and you'll just get clearer and like float towards it, because it impacts that bottom left one. If you see that, where it's the self-empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and that is how you feel about your own feelings, just intrinsically as Taylor, not the roles you play, not about other people, not where you're going, but just intrinsically for who you are. And you can see that like you got like very good clarity there, so you kind of know pretty well what your feelings are and like what you need. But also, at least from what the mind scan says, is that you're not spending much time there. Like, you're not spending time just that reflection for yourself and go like, am I willing to put myself above other things? And you know what? Me and Coach Josh see this all the time. Actually, pretty consistent that successful people are down, the high achievers are down at this place, driven people, because it's like, I'll deal with it later on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that the right flow here is to be able to go, what do you need just for intrinsically for yourself? Allows you to spend more time in reflection, which will allow you to focus on that self-direction, more zoomed out, and it's going to feel better overall. Like, that's just what jumps off the page for me, Tyler. So really cool the way this is set out. At least for me to geek out a little bit, because you've got like some great setup here. But like, how might you turn this into something you would want to move forward with? Like, what comes to mind for you? I mean, I know we're recording a podcast here, so share what you feel comfortable sharing. But like, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at this and also thinking about kind of my recent kind of life situation, I guess. I mean, it makes complete sense the way that it's turned out. So, like, having maybe a little less clarity in like what direction I want to go, and a lot of or a lack of the self empathy for sure is a big one. Mainly because like last summer I had lost a job and was unemployed for like 3 months, and that's never happened to me. During this time, our dog broke his legs. We had a lot of like actual financial expenses too, so it was just like a really like tough time. And so by the time we ended up moving in this period too, so then I was moving to a different country, have to find a job in a different country where I don't speak the language. Like, there's so many barriers, but finally ended up picking up like multiple jobs on top of like building my coaching business as well, right? And so, yeah, I think from September until December for sure, like it was just like nonstop grind. Like, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about like making up for everything that has happened over the past months in terms of like, finances and stuff like this. And so like, I wasn't really thinking, like, oh, I need to take a break or I should give myself a rest. Like, no, I was like, we've missed out on so much time. Like, we have to catch up on it. So it makes sense seeing this on paper, like why it would be so low, and like naturally, I feel like I'm always, not always, let me rephrase, not always. I'm more inclined to be less like self-empathetic because I'm the type of person who puts other people first. Not necessarily people pleaser, but will put other people before myself a lot of the time. And so, yeah, it makes sense. I get it. So I think it kind of clearly shows, the way to get better is to start caring about myself a little bit more. And that's actually one of my goals in 2024 is like one full day every single week. No work, no phone calls, no nothing. You just do whatever you want. Whatever that day is, that's what it is. So far, so
I
good.
love that. That rocks.
And that, just to be clear, Ted, I love that, by the way. And there's a lot more stuff in the mind scan that we could share, and perhaps that's why I Coach threw it up. But top left is exactly what you said, right? It's like the thing that you value the highest externally is other people. So it's much more comfortable for you to go and look after others. But also, that's what makes you a good coach, right? We talked about that earlier. People come to you. People always come to you, Taylor, to like tell you and share things with you. And that, you know what, like you like it, you do it, you're there, and then the more that you do it, you like it, you're there, the better you are, and the more of a deep pattern that gets created, right? And so it's easier to go there, but just having that awareness is so powerful. But that day you've got a week just for you, no phone calls. Just so I'm clear, is that additional to weekends, or is that how does that lay for you?
Yeah, so right now I'm trying to kind of schedule majority of my workload to be on like Tuesday through Thursday, and then having lighter Monday, Fridays, and then Saturday is like absolutely not taking any sort of clients, no nothing. Like Saturday is like a me day. So
it's awesome. Maybe for another time, but I've got to say, like, one of my favorite things is I've seen this in a few places, of course, but just from working with my clients over the years, it's double your 3 days, double your income, right? And like that's it may not exactly look like that, but essentially, the more 3 days you've got, the more money you can make. Why? Because it means that you've got to be more precise with the activities you're taking, and it's a lesson that I have to learn over and over and over. But if you let's say you were doing a 50-hour week, just for round numbers, 10 hours a day, weekends off, and you feel that time, like you would absolutely feel that time. And like with being around, you just take things and say yes to things, and before you know it, it's filled. And like you get that first maybe couple of months where it's just not, but then it's filled, and then that's that. Like most people, most business owners have that. Like that's it. That's always the way it is. But if you were to, let's just say you suddenly that was taken away by 80%. Instead of 10 hours a day, you only get 2 hours a day. When you think about, okay, I've got 2 hours a day. The first reaction normally is, no, I couldn't possibly do what I need to get done in 2 hours a day. I've got 10 hours of stuff. What are you talking about? But if you're that ruthless with it and that specific, and say, okay, what would I do if I only had 2 hours? What would those activities be? And we know that the 80-20 rule is always in practice, and so really, like we know that those 2 hours of activities, if you're forced to go, okay, what are they? Right. So you've got that 10 hours, you've got 2 hours of stuff. You've got 2 hours before that just to go, well, what do I want to do in those 2 hours? Can't do anything until you get to those 2 hours, and then bang, you do it. No way that you're doing stuff in that 2 hours that is just, okay, I'll give away my time. Like you've got to be focused. And therefore the more free time you got, the more leverage you can create, the more income you can make. And so it's just a really cool way of thinking about it. So I love the way you've been very specific with your time there, right? Because it's a really counterintuitive thing, and like I feel it so much for myself. So as I'm sharing this, I'm sharing it just as much for me as anyone who's listening, because it's as Coach Josh knows, it's a lesson I'm constantly talking about for me. But I just think it's such a powerful thing, right? Once we've achieved any level of success, like we owe it to ourselves and our business and people around us, and really the greater good, to get as focused as we possibly can only on that 20% activities. And really, if you think about it, anything else is just lazy, which is crazy to think if you're constantly complaining about being busy. Not you, Taylor, but just generally speaking. I think it's a fascinating thing for business owners to think about.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% because I have, some people I know who have like side hustles that they're doing and just to get a little extra income and stuff like that. And, you know, I've heard, through the grapevine, like things aren't getting done or like things are coming in slow. And like for me, that's like not ever something I want to be hearing from anyone who I'm working with. Is like, you're not getting things done on time. Like you're forgetting things or like whatever the case is. And so, my Google Calendar is literally my best friend. I have standing appointments with myself every Sunday to go over certain things. Like I'm trying to like kind of amp up the self accountability on a lot of those things this year, and actually kind of tracking the time that I'm putting in to see like, okay, am I putting enough time in, or is that time being used in a good and a like effective way, right? So because I'm already so strapped in terms of time as it is, being in coaching and having multiple gigs, now going to be playing hockey on top of coaching, like my schedule is literally crazy. So yeah, like you're 100% right. Like if you give yourself a dedicated 2 hours to do something and you actually like turn off the distractions, you'd be surprised like just how much you're able to get done, instead of saying, well, I have like a full day on this day to do it and we'll just see kind of what happens. Like, no, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, see what happens. Oh no! I can tell you what's going to happen. Not much. Yeah.
Nothing.
How much
Nothing
will you
will
expect?
Well, Taylor, one of the things that you said is important to you is building community. So I'd like to help you do that, and maybe if you could share where we can find you, especially if this resonates with our audience and what you're doing. So your podcast, your website, tell us about your business a little bit more if you could.
Yeah, so like we've been talking, I'm in the coaching space. I'm working with athletes and also sports coaches as well on their mental performance. So how is it that we can optimize our thinking strategies to have better physical results, essentially? But it's a lot more than just what's happening on the ice, off the ice. On the ice. It's also about what's going off the ice too. So like the biggest thing for me is especially with younger athletes in particular, because like this is such a vital skill to learn at a young age, I think, and they should be doing more to teach this at a younger age, I think too. But is to be able to take those strategies and be able to think about them and like actually understand the concepts and apply them to those different areas of life too. So say for example, you know, we're talking like how can I improve my focus when I'm in the game? Okay, well, how can I also take that same strategy and apply it to the classroom, or apply it to when I have homework after school or something like this, right? Whether you're high school or university, doesn't really matter. Just really making sure that they're able to use this in any point of their life, right? Like that's like the most important thing to me. Yeah, so that's my coaching stuff. So that's at tailored-minds.com. So tailored is actually TAYLORED -minds.com. And then I have the Athletic Mind podcast. So this started in early 2022. So this is now the third year of doing this podcast, which is really crazy, but also super exciting. And basically it's just talking everything to do with mindset, performance, and mental health for athletes, coaches. It's just open conversation, whether that's, you know, me hosting a solo episode or having guests brought on. This year I'm working on getting a little bit more committed to the consistency of the episodes. Yes, we're going to be getting Josh on for sure. Nick, you're more than welcome to join too. Yeah, and honestly, just want to have really great conversations that bring insights and value to the people who listen, and long term have more of a community where people can actually connect with one another, and you know, see where that can take you. Because honestly, some of the connections that I've made online are some of the best that have brought me to places I never would have thought possible. So it's great.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. And maybe just as a wrap note here, and I know we asked you to kind of observe from your mind scan results and some things that we were sharing, what your observations are, but maybe something that you're taking away from today's conversation, something that you're going to implement or utilize that we talked about today.
I think it's the clarity piece for sure. Number one is just getting clear on like the actual direction. And I think that will come with a little bit more time and experience in what it is that I'm doing. But secondly, I think what Nick had mentioned about like what was the quote? You make twice as much when you work twice as less, or something like this. That's
double your free time, double your income.
Yeah. So that's something good to take away from this for sure. Because I know how crazy my schedule is, and I think once I'm at a comfortable spot where I can start to pull back on some areas, then I can actually dedicate that extra time to putting and kind of directing towards the business and more in-depth operations and setups and stuff. So, yeah.
Love it. I also wrote down clarity even before you said that. There's the power of clarity, right? Like to know that where we are going is so powerful, because then we know what to do, right? The steps to achieve that become possible. And otherwise we're kind of like in a fog, right? We're not really sure on how to get there, right? If we don't know where we're going, we don't know how to get there. So that's my takeaway. And then Coach Nick, any final thoughts here before we sign off?
Love it. No, I'm going to leave it with those two. That's fantastic. Yeah. And thank you so much, Taylor. It was really, really good to spend some time with you today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.